Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today's we will talk about plant propagation by cuttings, and we will study different plants and also different parts that we are using for cuttings. So we'll start with the easiest ones, which is mostly home plants. These plants you can find in nurseries, and they can be used indoors or outdoors. One of the plants that can be used for propagation by leaf cutting is this plant, Sansevieria. This is very easy to propagate. You can also see that it can be propagated by separation because each plant produces more than one plantlet. But there's another way to propagate this plant. For example, if I take this leaf now, I just have to cut it. So this plant or this leaf from Sansevieria will give you more than one plant. You have to, of course, always understand which part goes down and which part. It's always better to have it a little slanted when you cut this plant for propagation. So here is one cutting that we will use for propagation. You can plant it right away in pots like this one here, straight away, or you can use it for propagation in any media, even water. So this is one example of plants that can be used for propagation by leaves. This part is going to go at the bottom and the upper part will go at the top. So I'm going to use this in water as well. So I'll just put this in water. Very simple. It doesn't need any hormone, it doesn't need anything. Just go straight and plant it in water right away. So it's very important to know and not get lose sight of where the bottom is and where the top part is. It's very important to understand where this is, right? So keep this in mind when you propagate plants, especially by leaf. Because even if you put it upside down like this, top part is down, it's not going to grow any roots or shoot. It has to be the bottom part that is at the in the soil or in the water. That will give to the roots and also the shoot later on. So we'll do other plants as well, but this is for this particular plant, which is propagation by leaf cuttings. So basically now we have the last step. This is my Sansevieria cuttings, leaf cuttings. The two of them. You could have as many as you want, and I will put this in water. This is this part, the end, where the roots will form, and then later on also the shoots, because this is a leaf cutting. It's not like the stem. When you do the stem, you will have the roots develop, and when you do root cuttings, you will have the shoot develop. But in this case, we have the leaf, so I'm just going to put it in water for now and wait until it starts growing. As I mentioned before, it's very important to know which part is which. This is the bottom end of the leaf, and this is the tip. So we will just put it in the right direction, and then in a few days it will start to develop the root system. Here we have the pothos or the money plants. It's just I just took a cutting from the plant and just put it in water. As you can see, this has preformed roots also, similar to the ficus. These are the preformed roots, and this is where the roots will actually develop. So you just take this cutting and you also place it in water, or you place it in a media, but since we are in quarantine, you just put it there. Also, this is easy to find. They are all over the place. You can find them in malls, in offices. You can take any cutting. You can cut even this part and then make your own cuttings. Put it in water. In also a week or so, it will start to develop roots. It's not going to die. It's going to be like this. So this is how easily plants can be propagated by leaf cuttings. So this is a ficus tree and one of the trees that we studied. And this reminds us of few concepts that I would like you to know. As you can see here, this ficus has roots here. You can see them clearly here. These are root systems. If you remember, these roots are not supposed to be here. This root is supposed to be down there. This is what we call adventitious roots. These are actually natural adventitious roots. And so this did not come from the seed, did not arise from any meristematic tissue in the seed, in the roots, but rather it came from the stem. For that reason, these are adventitious roots. How about some of these shoots? Some of these ficuses will also produce shoots from the root system. Those are also adventitious shoots. I will show you also some of these shoots in another ficus tree, not this one. Another thing in this one you need to know this is because of these roots, and we call them preformed root. Remember, there are two types of roots. There are induced ones, which basically when you cut a branch like this, then you place it in a media or in water or in any propagation media, then the roots will be formed here as a result of this injury. So we now cut the plant, that means we induce injury. And this will lead to this part, as you remember, will form a necrotic plate, and underneath that it will de-differentiate and it'll form a meristematic layer of cells. Those layers will also generate new roots. And so this is called injury-induced roots. These are preformed. Preformed means they were already there from the beginning for this particular tree. So this is how the different things or different root systems also that you consider when propagating, because preformed roots, trees with, or any plant with preformed root, will be easier to propagate than those without preformed roots, because those rooting system will be generated easily in these plants. Another thing to consider is also the kind of cuttings you are using. Of course, any plant stem that has preformed root will be easier to generate roots than a plant that doesn't have root system preformed, and that is the wind induced. And as we know, when you do talk about wind induced, there are like three types. One are easy to root, some are moderate to root. That means they require hormones. Some will never root at all, like mango, for example. If you take a stem cutting of a mango, it's not going to actually easily root. So there are different reasons for that, as I already talked about in the lecture. But for easy to root, because they already have root system built in, it will be easy for it to grow. And the moderately easy to root also are easy, because you just need to support it with auxin or a hormone or a rooting hormone or any substance that will encourage rooting of that stem cutting. So that is one thing you need to consider, how easy it is to root, and also if it has preformed or induced root system. A final thing I want you to know is the polarity. Of course, when you do a cutting, you always know this is a root system. So wherever you make a cutting, the roots will become here, and the shoot will always be from these buds. So even if you cut out this part, the shoots will be produced from here, and the roots will always be produced. You cannot just put it upside down, because this is not where the roots are produced. It is produced here. And based on how far they are from the crown, that's the crown. This is the crown. So anything closer to the crown is called proximal, and anything far away from the crown is called distal. And of course, the roots will be the opposite, anything closer to the crown. But it's the same idea. This is the crown. So the roots, this root will be the proximal end, and this is the distal end. But if you look at the shoot, this is the proximal end because the closest to the crown, and this is the distal end. When you make a cutting from a shoot, you know the root will become from the proximal end, which is this part. So the roots will be formed here. So if you take this cutting now, the roots will be formed here. You have to plant it this way. Even if you take more than one cutting from the same branch, the roots will always be. So when you plant it, you have to make sure it is planted this way, this direction, because the roots will come from this side. How about if you take a root cutting? If you take a root cutting, let's say for example, this is a root system, even this small root, this is closer to the crown, and this is far away from the crown. So when I cut this root system, okay, I know this is closer to the crown, this is far away from the crown. So this is the proximal end where the shoot will come from, and this is the distal end where the root will come from. The closer you are to the crown, that's where you get the shoot system. The far away for the root system, the far away, that's where you get the root. It's quite the opposite in the shoot system. If you cut this one here, this is where you're going to get the root, the proximal end. Remember, in the shoot, in the root system, the proximal end where you get the shoot. Here, the proximal end where you get the root. Why? Because it's closer to the crown. And of course, far away from the crown means you will get the shoot. So this is also, polarity is very important to make sure just you always plant it in the right direction. This is the proximal end. This is where the roots are going to come from. And this is the distal end, and that's where the shoot will come from this bud. In this case, it's very easy because all you have to do is just take one cutting like this and plant it in the soil, and you are done. Very, very straightforward. But if you take a root cutting like this one here, you have to understand that this will be closer to the crown, and this is where the shoot will come from. So proximal in the root system will give you the shoot. Proximal in the shoot cutting will give you the root. That's the difference between them. And finally, a small piece of information also. If you take a cutting like this one here, right, you want to make sure that you identify which place is the proximal end. Of course, most of us, or most of the propagation is actually done by shoot cutting, not root cutting. Very rarely you have plants that can be used for root cuttings. Farfar is a good example of a root cutting plant. But most of the plants are propagated by stem cuttings. So this is it. Now the decision to leave some of these leaves or not is dependent also on the plant. Some of these leaves, when they are mature, they help the plant because they have carbohydrates, they contribute carbohydrates, so that will help with the rooting. In other cases, or in most cases, if the root system already has, or if the shoot, like this one, the stem has already enough food reserves, you don't need the leaves. So that always depends on the plant. It doesn't hurt to leave a few of these leaves there. As long as you cut them, make them short, make them small, and then you wait. And then how long it will take before the root, it depends on the plant. So this is the most important information that you need to know before you go ahead and do stem cuttings from plant with pre-formed roots like this ficus, for example. It's very easy. Okay, so certain types of plants like this ficus tree, in Arabic it's Lisan al-Asfur, ficus religiosa, will produce also leaves, shoots from the root system. Not from the, this doesn't have, you don't see as much as you see the other ficus, the preformed roots, the adventitious root system. You see the adventitious shoot system. So even though these trees belong to the same genus, all ficus, but they perform differently in terms of which one produces adventitious shoot and which one produces adventitious root. And so it's very important to understand that adventitious shoot or root will always not come from the meristematic tissue, from the bud, from apical or lateral buds, but rather they are generated. If they are roots, adventitious roots, they will be generated from the shoot as you saw before, and if they are shoots, they will be generated from the root system. So that is adventitious shoot, which is different than the one that's produced from buds, whether they are lateral or apical, in the shoot system itself. These ones are produced from the root system. That's why we call them adventitious. They are extra. Now to the propagation part. This is how we propagate. This one is a ficus also tree. It's same thing applies. And so if you want to propagate this plant, you choose, for example, either a shoot system that is mature. In this case, you don't use soft, you use semi-hard in case of ficus. Most of the ficus, even though The ones that don't have adventitious roots, they are still easy to root because most of them would have nodes with pre-formed root system. So very easy to root. You don't take like this is called softwood. Usually the softwood is the green wood here, and the hardwood is this one. And also this kind of wood here that's already brown. Like this one is hardwood. The green one, the stem with the green is softwood. You want to take something in the middle, not the soft wood and not the hardwood. So you keep the green ones and you go all the way down here, and that's what you take for propagation, for example. Here's another good one. So for example, you take this one. See, this is green. I will leave this one because this is green wood. I'm not going to use that. I will use the semi-hard or semi-soft. It's in the middle. But I also will not use this wood or that wood, the thick ones, the old wood, which is not suitable for propagation. This is suitable for propagation. This green wood also, it can grow. In many plants we use softwood, but in most cases we use semi-hard or semi-soft stem for propagation. This is also because this is a shrub. It's a small tree, and this is the hard. This is it, hardwood, because it's old. This is soft green, this one with the leaves. And so we take the middle one, which is here, this one, which has already built-in buds. As you can see, these buds are already mature and ready for propagation. You can remove this part, and then you just go ahead and plant this stem cutting, and it's going to grow. So this is basically it. That's all you need to know about cuttings. Either using a leaf. Sometimes in some type of ficuses we'll use a leaf bud. What is a leaf bud? Basically it's the same like this one here, right? But we keep the leaf and also the bud. And this is also in Ficus elastica, is very common. Not this ficus, but another type of ficus called Ficus elastica. You take a leaf and the axial bud, which is here. I don't know if you can see it, but this is the axial bud, and this is the leaf. So this is called leaf bud cutting. This one is leaf bud cutting. This one is stem cutting. Of course, in this case, this is a soft wood because it's all green. So this is a soft wood cutting. So as you can see, we have stem cutting, we have leaf bud cutting, we have a root cutting like I showed you before, and all of these can be used for propagation. We also can use the leaves, and I use the leaf in Sansevieria. That's very easy also to propagate. You can use it also for calantula. You can use it for African violet. There are so many different plants that can be used for leaf propagation, all dependent on the plant species. There's no hard rule, like all of the plants can be propagated by soft wood cutting. No. Some plants can easily be propagated by this way, others will be only propagated by leaf, some other ones will only be propagated by root cutting. So you have to go back and read about the plant and which method has been used for propagation, because this has been already studied for most plants and the way to propagate it. This is very important to understand. Each plant has different characteristics. As you know, some are easy to root, some are moderately easy to root, some are hard to root. So you have to find the way for each plant on how to propagate it. That's basically it for this lab and the information about stem or propagation by cuttings. All these plants in this particular garden or any other plant, if you go to any nursery, 90% of the plants are propagated by cuttings, and you can easily do this at home. You can take any plant and try different ways and see which one works the best. Try to have the softwood, try to have semi-hardwood, try to have hardwood, and see which one works the best for you. And please write us in the comments which one worked for you for which plant. You can choose any plant. You can choose lime, citrus, you can use any kind of plant and test it. You can use also neem. And of course, certain plants cannot be propagated. Remember, most of this will work only in dicots. In many of the monocots, it's very hard to root, except if they have preformed root, like corn, like orchid. These kind of plants can be propagated by cuttings. But for the most part, we do propagation by cuttings for dicots. So try it out and let us know how things work. We wish you all the best, and we'll see you next time.